Welcome back to CIA Declassified. It is 1953. The United States is locked in a paranoid embrace with the Cold War, convinced that the Soviets have unlocked the Manchurian secret to breaking the human soul. The setting is a string of sterile, nondescript safe houses, shadowy black sites before the term even existed. In these rooms, the air is stagnant, smelling of burnt coffee and rubbing alcohol, as scientists under the technical services staff work beneath the hum of fluorescent lights that never turn off. They are hunting for the biological unlock, a way to strip away the human ego like an old coat. This was a time when the agency believed morality was a luxury and the human mind was simply another encrypted cable to be tapped. They believed that the most honest version of a man exists in the moments before he fully wakes, and they were determined to keep him in that vulnerable, babbling twilight. To understand the weight of this era, you have to imagine the absolute terror felt by the intelligence community after the Korean War. Reports were flooding in of American GIs appearing on television, seemingly dazed, denouncing their own country. The CIA didn't see this as a result of torture. They saw it as a result of science. They believed the communists had found a master key to the brain. In response, the CIA's dark wizard, Sidney Gottlieb, and his team at MKDelta turned the interrogation room into a laboratory. They weren't just looking for answers, they were looking for total control. They wanted to reach into a man's mind while he was paralyzed by sleep, inject a chemical stimulant, and watch as his secrets spilled out like water from a broken dam. This project was the tip of the spear in a secret war where the front line was the human nervous system. They wanted to create a dreaming witness, someone who would testify against themselves without even knowing they were awake. This is the era of Project P-1 Interrogations. How did this project get its designation? The reason for the name Project P-1 is rooted in the agency's internal filing system for proprietary pharmaceuticals. Within the MKDelta umbrella, P stood for pharmacological profile, and 1 indicated the primary priority of the research track, the revival protocol. The agency's goal was to categorize drugs not by their medical use, but by their operational utility. Meratran, known internally as A2, was the first substance in the P series believed to be capable of inducing hyper-talkative lucidity without the subject reaching full cognitive awareness. It was the P1 priority because it promised the ultimate intelligence coup, a witness who would tell everything and remember nothing. Let's dive into the documented ledger of this chemical crusade. Project P-1 was a high-priority research program under MKDelta, the CIA's overseas behavioral modification program. The primary drug under examination was pipridrol, marketed commercially as Meratran, or A2. Agency researchers labeled Meratran as A2 in all internal classified correspondence to maintain source security. The protocol involved first inducing a state of deep sleep using central nervous system depressants like Seconal. Logs confirmed that once the subject was under, they were injected with A2 to stimulate the cerebral cortex while the body remained in a lethargic state. The agency monitored the word count per minute of subjects to determine the optimal dosage for forced confessions. Records show that trials were conducted on unwitting subjects, including foreign nationals and individuals deemed expendable. The project utilized polygraph integration, hooking subjects to lie detectors while they were in the drug-induced revival state. Internal memos describe the state as hyper-talkative compliance, where the subject's ability to lie was allegedly suppressed. Reports indicate that A2 could cause dangerously high heart rates, tachycardia in over 30% of test subjects. The agency consulted with pharmaceutical giants to secure large quantities of A2 under research grants. Documentation shows the CIA experimented with dual route administration, giving the depressant orally and the stimulant intravenously. Project P-1 studied retrograde amnesia effects, hoping the subject would wake up with no memory of the interrogation. Records confirm that the agency's chief of medical staff warned the P-1 protocol was, quote, unpredictable and potentially lethal, end quote. The project was part of a larger effort to develop terminal interrogation techniques. Logs show that A2 was tested for its ability to counteract the effects of heavy alcohol during clandestine meetings. The agency mapped neural spike patterns of subjects using early electroencephalography, and records prove that the CIA paid local doctors in Munich to observe the effects of P-1 on clinical patients. The project analyzed whether the talkative state could be directed through sensory priming. Documentation reveals that Project P-1 researchers were obsessed with the threshold of confusion, where speech becomes incoherent. The agency developed a field kit for P-1 administration designed to be used in hotel rooms. Records show that A2 was discarded because it caused extreme paranoia and visual hallucinations in long-term trials. Project P-1 influenced the later MKUltra sub-projects focused on narco-hypnosis. Memos show that researchers believed A2 could be used to program a subject with instructions. The agency's technical services staff spent over $200,000 in 1950s money on the initial P-1 feasibility study. Internal reports state that the A2 state often lasted between 4 and 6 hours before the subject slipped back into a standard sleep cycle. Documentation shows that researchers attempted to use the protocol to debrief agents who had suffered mental breakdowns. The project studied the impact of A2 on subjects who were already under the influence of barbiturates. Records indicate that at least 2 test subjects in the Maryland facility suffered persistent psychotic episodes following treatment. The agency analyzed the vocal inflection changes of subjects under A2 to detect hidden emotional triggers. Logs confirm that the revival protocol was tested for use in rapid in-field extractions where time was of the essence. The project utilized the Gately siphon method for controlled intravenous drip administration. The agency utilized white noise generators during the revival phase to prevent subjects from latching on to external ambient sounds. Records show that A2 was initially preferred over amphetamines because it produced less peripheral jitteriness. Documentation confirms that the CIA's Office of Scientific Intelligence tracked European pharmaceutical patents to find similar compounds to A2. The project tested the use of A2 in combination with subliminal oral stimuli played through headphones during the transition from sleep. Records show that Project P-1 researchers attempted to use the protocol to uncover deep cover identities in suspected double agents. Logs indicate that the drug chlorpromazine was kept on hand as a chemical kill switch to abort violent reactions. The agency created a glossary of response to categorize the types of verbal patterns produced under A2. Internal audits from 1957 reveal that the P-1 research data was moved to a special access program to shield it from congressional oversight. The agency utilized pupillometry to measure the level of arousal in subjects as the A2 took effect. Records prove that the CIA established project safe houses specifically for P-1 trials in major international hub cities. Documentation reveals that researchers used visual priming by placing specific photographs in the subject's line of sight as they regained semi-consciousness. The project researched cross-tolerance between A2 and other stimulants to see if seasoned field agents could resist the effects. Records show that researchers recorded over 500 hours of interrogation audio from P-1 sessions for linguistic analysis. The agency investigated the use of A2 to reawaken repressed memories in subjects who had witnessed traumatic events. Memos indicate that P-1 was briefly considered for use on high-ranking defectors to verify their bona fides. Documentation confirms that the revival drug experiments were monitored by a secret ethical review panel that never once halted a trial. A quote from a declassified CIA Technical Services staff memo: "The objective is to achieve a state of wakeful unconsciousness where the subject's defensive barriers are chemically bypassed." End quote. A quote from a declassified P-1 lab report: "Subject 4 exhibited a rapid-fire verbal output for 3 hours following the A2 injection. However, the information was heavily interspersed with childhood memories." Quote from Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, the MKUltra program director and the CIA's dark wizard: "We are searching for the point where the mind speaks without the permission of the will." End quote. A quote from a declassified medical division assessment: "The use of A2 presents a significant risk of cardiac arrest, necessitating the presence of a full resuscitation team." And a quote from a declassified research summary: "It is not a truth serum in the traditional sense. It is a chemical crowbar for the human subconscious." End quote. If you go digging through the declassified MKDelta files, you're going to hit a brick wall of black ink. The most extensive erasures, totaling over 280 pages, occur in sections titled Foreign Site Operational Results and Subject Disposition Records. These are the records that tell us where they did it and what happened to the people they used. The agency maintains these redactions under National Security Exemption B-1, claiming that revealing the fate of the unwitting subjects would cause grave damage to international relations. Then, of course, there's the speculation that in the shadows, the agency was actually saying national security when in reality it was something much darker. Some speculators believe that the redacted pages hide a technique called subconscious harvesting, where the CIA didn't just want a confession, they wanted to download an entire person's life. They theorize that P-1 was used to strip an individual of their internal identity, leaving behind a hollowed-out shell who didn't even know their own name once the drugs wore off. In the deeper, more paranoid corners of the web, there's a nightmare theory that some subjects never returned from the A2 state. These theorists suggest the redactions contain records of permanent neural fire, where a subject's brain was pushed into a state of perpetual screaming insomnia. They believe these people were moved to silent black sites because their brains were chemically broken beyond repair, living out decades in a drug-induced, hyper-aroused hell that the government can never admit to. Another frequency of speculations suggests the redactions hide a successful Manchurian bridge. Analysts argue the CIA found a way to use the A2 state to plant sleepers, agents who are functionally normal until a specific code word triggers the dreaming witness inside them. They believe the redactions are actually a manual for a generation of unwitting CIA assets who have been active in global politics for decades, waiting for a call they don't even know is coming. There is also a chilling whisper regarding ancestral memory retrieval. Some fringe theorists speculate that the redacted pages describe experiments where A2 allowed subjects to tap into genetic memories not their own. They suggest the agency was trying to see if they could extract information from a subject's lineage, effectively turning the dreaming witness into a time machine for intelligence, and that the redactions exist because the results proved that the human soul is far more interconnected than modern science allows us to believe. Finally, there's the biological radio hypothesis. Some suggest the agency wasn't just listening to speech, but was trying to pick up internal monologues electronically. They speculate that P-1 was the first step towards remote interrogation, where a subject in the A2 state could be tuned into like a radio frequency. The redactions in this view are protecting the birth of telepathic technology that the agency perfected decades ago, turning the human subconscious into a broadcast tower for the state. Was Project P-1 Interrogations a success? Tactically, it was a scientific dead end. While A2 could make a subject talk, it couldn't guarantee that what they said was the truth. The confession produced was often a chaotic mix of reality and fantasy, making the intelligence gathered unreliable for high-stakes operations. Strategically, it was a moral failure. The project's reliance on unwitting subjects and the physical risk involved led to internal fractures and laid the groundwork for the ethical scandals that would gut the agency's reputation. Ultimately, it was a success because it defined the biological limit of interrogation. The failure of P-1 forced the CIA to move away from revival drugs and toward more sophisticated psychological techniques. It successfully proved that the human brain cannot be simply unlocked with a single chemical key. It also successfully identified the chemical structures that would later lead to modern stimulants. Furthermore, the agency successfully mapped the neural threshold for compliance, a data set that is still used to refine modern resistance to interrogation doctrine. Finally, it established that the most effective way to break a subject isn't through a needle, but through the environment around them. The project successfully cataloged the exact dosages required to reach the babbling point without inducing a seizure. It also provided a blueprint for how to mask physiological stress during drug-induced states, a technique later used in advanced polygraph evasion. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs go, the words and wakefulness of Project P-1 resulted in breakthroughs that define modern tech, such as stimulant refinement. The agency's intensive study of Pipridol provided the foundational data for modern ADHD medications. While A2 fell out of medical favor due to its side effects, the mapping of how it stimulated the cerebral cortex led directly to the development of modern cognitive enhancement pharmacology. Sleep architecture mapping. To master the revival protocol, the CIA had to map the different stages of sleep with unprecedented precision. This research contributed to the modern understanding of rapid eye movement cycles and is used today in the clinical treatment of narcolepsy. Neural monitoring miniaturization. The project required portable equipment to monitor vitals during covert interrogations. This paved the way for modern wireless biometrics used in telemedicine and wearable health technology. And psychological resistance theory. Project P-1 helped formalize the study of ego defense mechanisms. This operational breakthrough is the foundation of modern hostage negotiation and survival, evasion, resistance, and escape training. Project P-1 Interrogations is a haunting reminder of an era when the CIA believed the human mind was just another code to be cracked. It shows us the lengths to which men will go when they are driven by fear and the absolute certainty that their cause justifies any means. The dreaming witness was a phantom, a goal that remained just out of reach, leaving behind only a trail of broken subjects and blacked out files. We have learned that the subconscious is not a safe to be picked, but a landscape to be understood. The needles have been put away, but the questions raised in those windowless rooms still echo in our modern debates over ethics and intelligence. We are still trying to find the line between security and the sanctity of the human mind. The silence of the redactions is a testament to the fact that some bridges are better left uncrossed. Every time we argue about the limits of state power, the ghost of the dreaming witness stands in the room with us. The shadows of P-1 remind us that the most dangerous weapon of all is a man who thinks he has the right to own another person's thoughts. The echoes of these experiments persist in every modern discussion on bioethics and the digital privacy of our internal lives. Thanks for listening. Keep your thoughts private and your eyes wide open. And remember, sometimes the truth is best left in your dreams. Join us next time as we examine the crusade for freedom. Behind the patriotic parades and the freedom bells was one of the largest domestic propaganda operations in history. We'll uncover the facts behind the CIA's front groups that sold the Cold War to the American public and funded Radio Free Europe. It was a war of hearts and hype. Join us next time for the Bell of Shadows. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.